The decision was made to remove the information. However, everything in my nation is specifics. Everything has a name: fruits, seasons, trees, stones, and individuals. In 2024, on July 23rd, an 84A lady of 1 year emerged from a East London laundromat, silver hair, a crimson scarf, a light shirt, and a naked face. No stage, no flashing cameras, no bodyguards. However, in a matter of hours, that frank picture spreads like wildfire. They were Julie Christie, the 1960s icon who once shook Hollywood with just an elevated brow and a set of dejected, unique eyes. At one point, she made Warren after being rejected. Beatty wanted to wed her, played the part of a Bond girl, once received an Oscar, then vanished. She never retired, didn't say goodbye. She just said disappeared, as if the attention had never had the intelligence to keep her. What, then, caused the world to once revere a star, decide to live in silence? What is false behind the clothes and the glitz, behind those characters that never die? The spirit of an A-lady who was an artist and never lived by other people's anticipations. The trip of Julie Christie is more than simply a tale of film triumph. It teaches us to be free, to hang on, even if it requires walking to oneself away from the radiance and glamour. Julie, on April 14th, Frances Christie was born. In 1940, a tea ceremony at the Shingong Tea Estate planting in northeastern Chabua, Assam, India. Frank Street John Christie, her father, was a plantation manager from Britain, and her mother, Welsh painter Rosemary Ramden. Julie lived from the time she was born, halfway between two extremes: the rigorous discipline of the colonial British government on the one hand, and the independent thinkers, her mother's creative personality, on the other. John was Julie's half-sister. Christy was raised in her father's connection to a plantation in India employee, a partnership taken into consideration disgraceful in light of colonial society. This tale was kept secret for several years. However, that was the first indication that Julie's existence would be entangled with implicit paradoxes. Even so, she hardly ever brought it up thereafter. Being raised in a household characterized by stillness, she was definitely molded by her fractures. Viewpoint on truth, power, and identity. Julie was transferred to England when she was 6 years old to research. Her foster family reared her, removed from her parents' home and enrolled in a convent school for Catholics. The surroundings was severe, frigid, and inflexible, a striking in contrast to her vibrant early years in India. This is where she was once dismissed for using inappropriate language. Tales, an obvious early indication that she was not one to be bound by regulations. Julie would eventually acknowledge that this time frame ended. Her with a profound feeling of desertion, it has a significant impact on her lifetime unwillingness to commit, her hesitation to be married, and her choice to forego having kids. Following her stay in England, Christy was transferred to continue in Paris. Her schooling and improve her French, as she had been proficient in the language since early life. There, at 9 years old, Julie experienced a life-changing event. In private, she broke out of her boarding school and wandered for the whole day with a stranger, a budding performer who is having trouble create a reputation for himself. His narrative captured her attention. Later, Julie would remark, "That's when she realized she wanted to pursue a career in acting. Not to gain notoriety, but for liberty. The ability to live freely several lives in order to escape the she had experienced a strictly regulated world since she was a youngster. When Julie returned to England, made the decision to go for the stage, she signed up. In the Speech Central School in London's drama is among the most notable performing arts institutions in the nation. Julie stood out there, not because she did better intellectually than others, although due of the way she articulated herself, unforced, contemporary, and natural. She didn't behave to win over her instructors. She pretended to be actual. Following graduation from the Central London School of Speech and Drama, Julie Christie did not instantly turn into a well-known face on the large screen. She started her career slowly and discreetly, but always made a statement with her unique approach. Although a lot of actors from that time still followed the conventional theatrical style, exaggerated and with strong diction gestures, Julie chose a more organic, contemporary manner of behaving, making her, it seems as if the characters have stepped very, really life. Christy had her first job in 1961. The role of television in BBC Science A for Andromeda is a fiction series. It was an odd job. She portrayed a lady who was created via a computer, chilly, seductive, and not completely human. Julie's subtle performance, light conversation, nuanced facial expressions, attracted both directors and viewers. She was swiftly in contrast with Brigitte Bardot, yet seen as a more intelligent, mysterious variant. The BBC was even suggested that she sign a long-term agreement, but they turned it down, a decision that was subsequently considered a significant error. When the sequel to the program was made, and Christie's part was changed, as she had already departed to look for of her own course. In 1962, she started showing up in motion pictures, with 2 supporting parts in comedies from Britain. For example, The Fast Lady and Crooks Anonymous. Both movies were a fun kind of entertainment. It failed to create any publicity for Christie, but she was given the opportunity to become acquainted with the camera and discover the technical aspects of filming. It was a moment when she silently watched and learned way movies were produced internally, ready to provide the background music as getting ready for a bigger jump. In 1963, she had the chance when she was chosen to play Liz in Billy Liar, a free-spirited, seductive, and rebellious young lady who declined to be limited by a sleepy little town or men who are too shy to live truthfully. The Liz is seen strolling along the street in head raised high, passing in a miniskirt each glance without turning around, immediately come to represent the British women's awakening in the 1960s. Few individuals are aware of the function of Liz was intended to be an actress, Topsy Jane, who was forced to step down because health problems. Julie was introduced at the last moment. Not having much time, Christy came to the set to get ready, and the whole team was taken aback. John, the director Schlesinger, renowned for his attention to detail, acknowledged that Julie doesn't pretend. She lives as whether she's indeed Liz. The movie was an unexpected success, and reviewers praised it as the creation of a new symbol. Julie Christie, unorthodox, silent, scandal-free, made it difficult to turn away even now, whenever she was on screen. In 1965, the term became unavoidable, Christy, Julie. During that 1 year, she performed 2 characters that couldn't be more different, each making a significant contribution to film. Historical figure, Diana Scott, an impulsive and ambivalent model in Lara and Darling Antipova, a kind yet very kind lady in Zhivago, Dr. Julie Darling represented the swinging 60s emblem, a new wave of contemporary city women who were stubborn and disobedient. The movie explored the void that lies behind the dazzling exterior of the affluent class, and Christy, with her icy, sharp eyes and purposefully bland tone, Diana felt uncomfortably real. The Oscar for Best Actress firmly came to her. However, what people recalled with same clarity as the attire she wore to the award ceremony, a glistening gold pantsuit that was created and stitched by herself. She was the first to the lady who wore trousers on stage at the Oscars, breaking with the strict fashion Hollywood conventions with a single act and without regret. In the same year, Christy featured in Doctor, directed by David Lean. One of the most popular epics is Zhivago, Forever. Julie played Lara as a Russian lady who was delicate and tenacious, enmeshed in the chaos of conflict and disassociation. Her chemistry on film was so strong with Omar Sharif that a few sequences were cut because they were too, by 1960s standards, controversial. The movie gained international recognition and 5 Academy Awards. Phenomenon. Christy, in a short while months, had changed from an ascending celebrity into a global figure. Duration. In addition to calling it the year of however, Julie Christie also said, "What Julie Christie's attire has more sway on style compared to all of the clothing of the 10 ladies with the nicest outfits combined." And they weren't exaggerating. Taking off her head coverings, turtlenecks to her carefree governing, Julie defied fashion by creating a kind of fashion that disapproved of fashion in general. Young ladies in America and Europe hurried to follow her example. After getting to her top, rather than riding the crest of blockbuster deals, she selected parts that were difficult, and Fahrenheit 451, which is unexpected, 1966, which François Truffaut directed, is a depressing. She acted in a science fiction movie. Clarice and Linda, both in the prominent roles. Next, The Madding Crowd is Far Away, 1967, in which she depicted an autonomous 3 guys chasing a lady, signifying another pivotal moment from film star to serious actress. Early in the 1970s, Christie kept getting better with Don't Look Now, a daring psychological horror movie, 1973. It included a realistic sex scene. Rumor had it that it was genuine. Then arrived Mrs. Miller and McCabe, 1971, in which she played a clever and crafty brothel owner, a position for which she received a second nominated for an Oscar. Following a time of leaving the mainstream film industry, Christie brought Afterglow, 1997, back with her. American indie film in which she portrayed a disgruntled middle-aged lady. In Her Union, the performance that was a 3rd nomination for an Oscar. 10 years. Afterwards, one of the most powerful, her most well-known parts to date, cast Julie as an Alzheimer's patient lady facing the progressive deterioration of memory and her husband's lack of assistance. The position brought a 4th Oscar nomination for her, in addition to a SAG Award, a Golden Globe, and many accolades from reviewers. Away from her, a few scenes even used in medical education help educate patients with Alzheimer's conduct, a unique example of the power of genuine performance. Julie Christie may have served as a representation of beauty and for a generation of intellectuals, but personal life has never been a dream come true. She lived freely, spoke Italian and French, devotedly, and never concealed her uniqueness. However, underneath that glowing exterior lay a complicated soul, always cautious of celebrity, constantly fearful of being dominated. Prior to the Julie Christie was well known as an Oscar-winning celebrity, she was only a rising star, aspiring actor gaining knowledge about endure in the hectic world of movie. During that period, she first met Terence Stamp in the early 1960s. Acclaimed as the most talented young actor, dangerously promising British face film, they first met in a theater in London. Celebration. Stamp was already creating a stir, with Billy Budd and attracting notice from Hollywood. Christie remained faint. Name, but one aspect about her remained constant. An air of strong independence combined with a delicate, intriguing enigma. A guy named Stamp, attracted to women he found difficult to understand, was immediately enthralled by Christie's silent mystery. They spoke for hours about European film, literature, politics, as well as the ridiculousness of celebrity. It wasn't a passionate love story, but a profound resonance, nearly soulmates, yet maintaining a certain distance at all times. The Stamp said in a previous interview that Julie doesn't need someone to help her stand out, enters a room without saying anything, and all the others find out how to be silent. Both were about to become famous, and it became the very thing in a sense. It caused them to separate. Stamp started extending her stay in the United States, while Julie was starting to make a splash in the UK. When Liz's part in Billy Liar arrived, the element that brought her into the public eye, Stamp was first to accompany her in reading the script and urged her, "Just do what you impulses." Nevertheless, space, time, and ultimately, different life objectives led to their relationship to wane. No formal separation, no disputes, and no treachery. Simply two individuals traveling in separate instructions, and neither made a U-turn. What was noteworthy was how, years later, they continued to discuss each other with deep regard. According to Stamp, Julie is unlike anybody I've ever met. Perplexed me as she did, and nobody has ever forced me to remain silent while a discussion. Julie, on the other hand, seldom ever spoke about Terence a lot in public, yet regarding their relationship, she simply said, "He had a better understanding of me." More than I realized. Prior to Julie Christie becoming renowned around the globe for Dr. Zhivago or Darling, she shared a home with Don Bass, and painter, not well known, not included in the entertainment sector, but somebody who was essential in the early years of her profession. Don and Julie first met about 1962, when she was barely starting to land small-scale television roles. Back then, Julie wasn't a celebrity yet, and Don was a reserved, youthful artist. They moved in swiftly, cohabitating as a married couple in a little apartment in London. Don disliked being in the spotlight, and at the time, Julie didn't need it. In 1965, two were engaged, but never married. Christy once explained this bond as the most secure life she never had. Don was quiet, kind, and always allow her to be who she is, without makeup, without roles to perform. Julie's Oscar victory. Don was the one who went with her in 1966, returning to London. The pair was captured on camera, at the airport, but the media was unaware. Who he was. That was just perfect for Julie. She disliked having her private life made public, the general public. But when Julie's career took off, things started to change. She needed to go somewhere, continuously for shooting in different nations, but Don continued to yearn for a calm, stable existence. Slowly, they drifted separated, not because of a dispute, but because they want to live a variety of lives. Their separation occurred in 1967. In 1966, during Born Free's royal premiere in Warren Beatty, London, by then already one among the most well-known performers in Hollywood, saw for the first time Julie Christie. She was waiting in queue to welcome the Queen Elizabeth II, modestly attired yet impressive without grinning or striking a pose. Beatty, who was going to the function with his then Leslie Caron, an actress and girlfriend, turned around in order to have another look at Julie. For a guy who had encountered almost all Hollywood's screen siren, the one just a quick look revealed that she was different. Anyone else. Beatty questioned his companion, Richard Silbert, the production designer, who, having collaborated on Petulia with Christy, to join them. Julie consented to a phone call. Give a call. Beatty took off right away for San Francisco, the location of her filming. There the first encounter was far from romantic, chilly, forthright, and a little tense. However, both were some who didn't first believe in perceptions. They liked things complicated. After both had finished, a few months later, their prior partnerships, they formally joined as a couple. While they were 7 years of dating, 1967 to 1974, Warren and Julie were never subject to the same roof. Nonetheless, they remained consistent, beings in one another's life. They kept their personal areas separate, yet seemed to together at significant events, film premieres, red carpets, as well as expert choices. Julie appeared in 3 movies, with Beatty, Mrs. Miller, and McCabe, Shampoo, Heaven Can Wait. However, more significantly, they both believed that art fame couldn't alter the world. According to Beatty, "I've never met anyone. Julie doesn't have to express that she likes her, anything. Just hearing it makes people silent, her thoughts." However, the partnership wasn't simple. Julie was passionate about love. She was a believer in faithfulness, but not in getting married or starting a family. Beatty on the suggested, however, but Christy turned it down. She had no desire to have children or to be restricted by formality. To her, the truth paperwork was not required for the connection. However, consequently, Beatty thought that if they were in love with someone else and weren't married, wouldn't be considered treachery. Christy didn't agree. "I loved him," she once said, "but I couldn't endure the sense of belonging." During the 7 years, Christy repeatedly forgave and remained quiet times, but finally became tired. Crazy still referred to her as wife and still loved her, among pals, and even said that he would back if they split up, treat her like a spouse. However, none of it was necessary for Julie. She was independent, self-assured, and decided to walk away. Quietly, the relationship came to an end. They maintained their friendship and mutual respect, every one another. Beatty created the script in 1981. For Reds with a key position designed for Julie declined it, however. Not because she was unwilling to assist him, but since she thought the role ought to be performed. Not by herself, but by a lady from America. In the end, Diane Keaton played the part, was nominated for an Oscar. However, Beatty added an homage at the conclusion of Reds, for Jules. In the year 2000, Warren Beatty honored with the Irving G. Thalberg Award. Christy from the Academy showed up in the tribute film, not as a distinguished visitor but as a longtime friend in attendance at just the ideal time. Following a separation from Beatty, Warren and Julie Christie didn't go right into another long-term partnership. She decided to a more personal existence, withdrawing from the social circles of Hollywood and removing oneself from needless sound. The following guys didn't swap out anybody. They were just companions across various stages of her existence. Every partnership had its personal experience, but none of them turned her off. From the route she had selected, the first was music and musicians. Brian Eno, producer. Christy first encountered him in the latter part of the 1970s. They lived for a short time, together in the countryside of England. No one troubled them there, and no one has to pay attention. The pair exchanged an innate temperamental alignment. A love of the arts, an aversion to loudness, and a strong border with the media. As stated by they may sit close to one other, pals, other in quiet and stillness for hours. Felt really relaxed. When it was over, no justification was required. American director Jim McBride arrived, when Christy was working on an indie movie that was eventually put away. He was direct, chatty, and fast-paced, the antithesis of the peaceful way of life she adopted. There, the romance didn't last long. Christy. He was too American, too, he once commented. Too loud, hurried, no remorse, no conflict. With Terry O'Neill as the photographer, the work was the first step toward connection. O'Neill had shot a number of famous pictures of Christy, and during those meetings, a connection silently designed, but similar to countless others, it was short-lived. Later, O'Neill said, My eyes were in love with Julie, but I didn't understand how to pay attention to her quiet. Nothing was wrong between them. They were simply not sufficient to remain. Lou was another name. Adler, the famous producer in Hollywood. Christy was at a party when they first met, still debating whether to go back for a movie in the United States. Adler was affable, chatty, and really acquainted with the realm of entertainment. Specifically, she was attempting to distance herself from. Only a few months later, Christy went back to England, putting a stop to before the connection might develop complex. In retrospect, all of these gentle guys came and departed. No one remained for the long term, but each one was a Julie's willingness at the time to let her heart expand. However, she didn't look for attachment, and she didn't need labels. Following, she still loved Beatty, but in her own way, gently, on one's own, and with a clear head purpose. And when she decided to live alone, it was only because she discovered more peace amid the silence. Following a string of silent farewells and unrestrained connections, Julie Christie at last discovered a long-lasting companion throughout time. She first met in 1979. Duncan Campbell, an investigator from Scotland journalist, at a London social gathering. Campbell is neither an artist nor a director. Originated in the realm of truth, exposés on unfairness, frank journalism about corruption and power, the very things Christie has always been concerned about, seldom seen in romantic relationships. They expanded swiftly, intimate, and shared a home together without ever getting married or going public statements. For almost 3 decades, they evaded notice, leading a tranquil life in a residence in London's East End and subsequently a tranquil Welsh farm. While Christie continued to write, Campbell slowly moved away from the camera. They had the same life philosophy: there's no need for noise without requiring confirmation from the crowd. A few publications in 2007 reported that Duncan and Julie had covertly married in India. The information shocked the public. Everybody thought they were partners for life without the paperwork. However, Christie only chuckled when questioned and uttered, "Nope. I've been married for a very long time. Don't trust the information you read in the documents." That response both rejected and validated the narrative, exactly how she always managed her personal affairs, never suppressing reality while never allowing others to determine what was real. In contrast to the men, Campbell never attempted to walk before him into Julie's limelight. He just stood next to her in silence. They weren't artists together, but they had a common ideal: concern for the environment, social responsibility, resistance to nuclear power, and solidarity with those who have been forgotten. Julie did not need affection for another person since, in her life, for the first time, she didn't need to provide an explanation, must provide room for another person, and did not need to protect herself from harm, although never shown those near. They saw the connection with Campbell is the only real safe for Julie Christie harbor, not due of their union, but because they maintained their peace together, and on a level playing field. In a world where everything might end up in the news, they decided to be silent instead. Additionally, they put up with that silence. Christie, Julie did not accumulate hundreds of positions, show up on television all the time, and never ventured into manufacturing or directing, like to many of her peers. However, with just a few of featured performances as well as a number of making unorthodox decisions, she left a cinematic heritage characterized by genuineness, depth, as well as ferocious autonomy. In the movie, she represented not just for her, but also for the 1960s and 1970s inherent beauty, yet for a contemporary look of acting in a subtle yet effective way. Diana in Darling and Laura in Dr. Zhivago and her Don't Look characters. Now, Afterglow, Mrs. Miller, McCabe, and all of them depicted ladies who were inconsistent and complicated, but always in command. When she was away from her performance was so highly regarded that it was used as a textbook in medical colleges, an illustration of the behavior of Alzheimer's very uncommon award for a film function. However, Christie's impact went beyond far away from the screen. Time magazine once said that she had a greater influence on fashion than the 10 ladies with the greatest outfits combined. When she received her Oscar, she wore pants with broad legs that she had made herself. She accomplished more than only alter the perception of the Hollywood actress. She put a stop to the concept that the stage should only be used for clothes. From after then, women's clothing was no longer anything that needed authorization. Julie Christie was one of the first people to go against what is often expected imposed on female performers. She refused to get married under social pressure, didn't bear kids unless she really didn't live in Hollywood because they wanted to, the benefit of her profession, and she wasn't scared to raise awareness of tax evasion, morality in the sector, or ecological issues. She became a silent symbol for a contemporary women's generation, those who had the courage to decide what they really want, even if it wasn't in style. Even without making regular appearances in public, Christie's name is still displayed on Greatest British Actresses. The majority of prominent figures of the 1960s, early feminist role models, and maybe the greatest, most importantly, she was a lady who lived life completely according to her own terms, from starting to finish. Julie Christie, 84, has almost vanished from the planet of entertainment. No interviews, no social media, no appearances on the red carpet. She lives in a humble Welsh house with her spouse, Duncan Campbell, a journalist, rearing sheep, walking every day and planting trees. When, for the first time in 8 years, she was seen. Years at a laundry in July 2024 she was dressed in East London, a light blue shirt, sunglasses, a crimson scarf, and her natural silver hair. A totally contradictory picture with the screen siren that used to flash to the 1960s. Christy used to have everything. An Oscar, renowned beauty, impact that included both movies and fashion. Nevertheless, she decided to back off, not because she had outlived her time, but because she went on a new route, one devoid of sound, without having to be recalled the manner of Hollywood. For her, achievement wasn't regarding the number of applauders, but on being able to maintain herself in the end. In a world where individuals are so often pulled off by celebrity, naturally, Julie Christie decided to vanish in order to lead a genuine life. And maybe that's the reason, even in her. Despite her disappearance, her name still has a peaceful respect. Julie Christie never made an effort to appeal to the general public. She didn't pursue perpetual youth, didn't care about accolades, wasn't shaped by Hollywood norms. She used to shine brightly, then moved stealthily away from the spotlight to lead a solitary life, judged sufficient. Not everyone is capable of that, particularly someone who used to stand in the heart of a time. Julie's narrative isn't a fallen stars, but rather a lady who made the correct decision for even when it wasn't trendy herself. And maybe that kind of liberty is the most authentic version of excellence. What most strikes you about the life of Julie Christie? A show? A brave choice? Or how she disappeared from the audience but left a lasting impression, Mark? Leave a comment with your ideas below. Remember to click like if you feel that this tale merits being told, and sign up to continue exploring inspirational experiences like as Julie's Christie. We appreciate you being here.